Jaxon Smith-Njigba and Jordan Addison both had breakout performances in Week 12. We'll tell you who you should be buying in your Dynasty League next.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. On today's show, we're going to take a look at some rookie quarterbacks that performed well in Week 12. We're going to look at some running backs that have us a little bit concerned. But Kate, let's start with some year two receivers who are really starting to break out. Let's start with our guy, Jaxon Smith-Njigba, who we've talked about a lot on the podcast over the last couple of weeks, but it seems like things are finally starting to click for him.
Yeah, it feels like we're finally hitting the kind of wall of consistency that we've hoped to have the entire time. And like, let's be clear, it's not that the skill set hasn't been there the entire time. We've talked endlessly about how JSN was a top tier receiving prospect and that maybe we were a little bit too reactive to his slow start. I mean, obviously, like when you're looking at, the touchdown production from Jordan Addison as a rookie, when you look at the record breaking season that Puka Nacua had, yeah, JSN's like 600 plus receiving yards as a rookie looks fairly underwhelming. But I think we have to remember year one, Shane Waldron offense. Yes. JSN tried to warn us. He was like, this isn't it. But Ryan Grubb and like this entire offensive system seems to be clicking. They have the pass volume, they have the receiving efficiency, like things are starting to come together for this unit. And in a big way, Jaxon Smith-Njigba, who, I mean, over the past 4 weeks, like he's looking like a true wide receiver one.
And the thing that I like the most about what we've seen from Jaxon Smith-Njigba is just a lot more targets, 38 targets in the last 4 games, Kate. And if you go back even, to week 4, he's had at least 6 targets in every single game. He's had double-digit targets 4 different times this year. He's really starting to become more involved in the offense. And this was something that you and I wanted to see at the beginning of the year, like make DK Metcalf the big play outside receiver that you give 5 to 6 targets a game, and let Jaxon Smith-Njigba be the guy that's the chain mover, right? Like the one that you build your offense around. Let him be the quote unquote wide receiver one.
Like the consistency guy. Like,
correct. Yes, exactly. And it's happening now. And you're starting to see the numbers from JSN. I've been all in for a while because I love his talent. I love the fit with Geno. I'm just glad that we're starting to see the usage here.
I mean, still just 22 years old. He's not going to turn 23 until February here in the coming year. So like that, despite the fact that he's going to be headed into year 3 next year, like he's still super, super young. And there's a lot of, I think, untapped abilities there. He's 6 foot, 196 pounds, had the pedigree, that first round draft pedigree, and had the production to back it up. Again, I know I've said this way too much, but Jaxon Smith-Njigba, Garrett Wilson, and Chris Olave were all on the field at OSU at the same time. And It was JSN who, yes, had primarily a slot role, but he was the best wide receiver on the football field when all 3 of them were together. So as highly as you think of Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, you have to remember that JSN has that similar tier. He doesn't have top end speed, but he has such a refined skill set in other areas that it more than makes up for a lack of Malik Neighbors 4.3 speed.
There was another year 2 receiver that had a breakout performance, Kate, on Sunday. That was Jordan Addison. 8 catches for 162 yards and a touchdown. He looked awesome in this game. He was getting open. He got off to a really slow start because he had an ankle injury that he was dealing with in training camp. I believe it was a high ankle sprain.
Then he had another ankle injury.
Then he got another ankle sprain.
The other ankle.
Yeah. But over the last 4 games, Kate, 3 touchdowns. You're starting to see him become more involved in the offense. He's a lot cheaper than JSN is right now. But is he somebody that you want to go out and target in trades? You're not as much. Well, what's your fear here? Why are you hesitant to go out and get Jordan Addison?
Here's the thing. I shouldn't be that much more fearful. If I'm going all in on JSN, I should go all in on Jordan Addison probably as well. Because like clearly it's not a fluke. Like Jordan Addison, one of the best wide receivers in the National Football League, and was probably partly responsible for the drafting of my Pittsburgh Steelers, Kenny Pickett, in the first round. I have to imagine that without Jordan Addison, that would have never happened. So maybe I'm just angry. He's shown a lot of skills, but I do say like he is on a team that he's probably never going to be the go-to guy. The same way that we're talking about JSN as like he could be that volume monster where you go to him every time to move the chains. He's just probably, I think, not going to have that dynamic there in, Minnesota, just given the fact that you have, Justin Jefferson on your team. You have TJ Hawkinson, who, yes, coming, like, he's back from his torn ACL, but, like, probably still not up to 100% of what he could be and what we know he is. Like, there's more competition for targets, more questions at quarterback, I think. Like, it seems to me at least, and maybe you could speak more to this, like if you're hearing any sort of insider buzz about Geno Smith's future in Seattle, like it seems like that situation is kind of, the dust is settling, right? And I don't have the sense that like there's a lot of question marks up on the horizon. Like Sam Darnold, he's played good, sometimes great, sometimes bad. Like we've seen the ups and downs of the Sam Darnold experience here, but
so here's how
trust it.
I trust Minnesota's offense just to be better generally, despite who's at quarterback. I mean, even Sam Darnold yesterday didn't have his best game. Averaged 9.7 yards an attempt, 330 yards, 2 touchdowns. Like for most quarterbacks, that's an awesome day. That environment is just so great for wide receivers. And you mentioned TJ Hawkinson. He had 114 yards yesterday. Like finally started to look like TJ Hawkinson. In a vacuum, I prefer Jaxon Smith-Njigba over Jordan Addison pretty comfortably, Kate. But I think Addison's going to be the much easier receiver to trade for. And we've seen when Addison is healthy, he can put together games like this, like these spike weeks, because he's the one getting the downfield targets. He's the one that's getting one-on-one coverage and not double teams. I really like Jordan Addison as like a high upside wide receiver 3. He's the guy that I would be more likely to go out and try to acquire, just given his price tag and because he can be a week winner any week because of that offense.
And that's totally fine. I do think if you're looking at him as more of like a wide receiver 2 with weekly wide receiver 1 upside, that's the way to approach it. But if you're looking at him thinking he might become the wide receiver 1 for his team, you're just delusional. So like,
Correct.
I think it's all about how you are looking at him and how he fits into your roster build specifically.
Correct. I don't even think you should value him as a wide receiver 2. I think you're looking at him as a wide receiver 3. And hopefully, if you have a good team, hopefully where he's even further down on your your pecking order than that. Okay, let's talk about some rookie quarterbacks who put up some big numbers in week 12. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Hillsdale College. Time is our most precious commodity, so don't waste it scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours. How can you spend it wisely to improve yourself? Why don't you check out our sponsor, Hillsdale College, which is offering more than 40 free online courses, including Constitution 101, the meaning and history of the Constitution, introduction to free market economics, the great American story, A Land of Hope, and the rise and fall of the Roman Republic. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced so that you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, and discussions, or just kick back and enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. hillsdale.edu/lockedon. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in award winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. You can win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Plus, it's the best way to get action on most states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We are breaking down all of the action from Week 12. And, Kate, let's go to some rookie quarterbacks. Caleb Williams, I thought this was probably his best game of his career against Minnesota's defense, which can be terrifying to play against. 32 of 47 for 340 yards and 2 touchdowns. Also added in 33 yards on the ground. Some of the plays that he made in this game were absolutely ridiculous. We know that on dynastyleaguefootball.com right now that the gap between Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams has been pretty wide in ADP. Do you think that's closed at all in recent weeks?
I definitely think it's closed. We saw Jaden Daniels come back down to earth. Now, I do think that there are a few things that, we can talk separately about Jaden Daniels and maybe what's going on there in the Washington offense. But in general, I think Caleb Williams without Shane Waldron as his OC, which we just talked about how Shane Waldron wasn't good for the Seahawks offense. He's breaking news, not great for the Bears offense either. And things are just looking a little less difficult. Caleb Williams, I still think there's some things he needs to wrangle in, right? And I think sometimes touch still seems to be kind of an issue. Sometimes his arm goes on one speed and one speed only, and it's rocket ship, which is really great when you need to throw the ball at a ridiculous arm angle down the field. The way I screamed, I don't know if you haven't seen this throw from Caleb Williams yesterday, it's probably his best yet of his career. He is about to scramble what looks like and throw the ball out of bounds. No, he throws, on the move, throws this, across his body, connects for, I don't know, what was it, 40 something yards down the field. Just absolutely ridiculous throw. And we're starting to see those. Sometimes every play looks like it, he's trying to throw it at 40 yards down the field, even when he's not. There are things that he needs to still, I think, wrangle in, but we're starting to see Caleb Williams looks like Caleb Williams again. And that's the most encouraging thing. He's mobile. He's creating plays outside of the pocket. All of the things that have made Caleb Williams so special as this generational quarterback prospect we're seeing that again. He doesn't look like, I don't know, that guy who was just laying on the turf and had to wait for somebody to come pick him up because he'd been hit for the 9th time in a single game.
I thought he looked fantastic. According to PFF, he had 5 big time throws against the Vikings, which is pretty incredible. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I thought the gap between Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams was stupid in dynasty leagues because Caleb is so much younger. I think he's going to be so much more durable. And we're seeing the big time production, right? This is the 3rd game this year where he's had over 300 yards passing and multiple touchdowns. He's also giving you something on the ground. I mean, he's up to 340 rushing yards this season, which isn't a ton, but Kate, like he's going to finish his rookie season with 500 rushing yards, which is pretty incredible for a quarterback that we don't really think of as a rushing threat. So I'm still all in on Caleb Williams. I've had some offers in some dynasty leagues, one of which that we play in for Caleb Williams, and I've turned down every single one of them. One from somebody named Michelle that I'm not going to mention what the offer was, but I need a better offer, Michelle. I'm all in on Caleb Williams. I think this was one of the best performances I've seen from him, not only in the NFL, but from him in years.
Yeah, I think, again, just pieces are coming together. There's talent around him. Like the Bears did a really good job off season. I know that like there's questions about, the offensive line. I still think they've made progress in terms of making this a viable passing offense on a more consistent basis. Caleb Williams going to be a big part of that. He's got the talent at wide receiver. He's got a very talented receiving tight end. Everything's starting to come together. Meanwhile, things are not coming together for Jaden Daniels, number 2 overall pick there in Washington. Has not looked the same. Like you could break this season into, weeks like 1 through 4 and then the rest of it. And I think there's a couple of things happening. I think, which we've seen historically for Cliff Kingsbury. I think I saw it dubbed the Cliff. Yeah. The Cliff. Start the year really hot and then into October, November, fizzle out a little bit in terms of that offensive production, consistency. I think that's a part of it. I think this rib injury is still probably hampering the play. I know like the team has come out and said like, well, that, he's fine. He's good. But even if structurally you are good from a rib injury, we know that like one of the biggest aspects, as long as there's not any structural issue that could cause like further damage, it's a pain thing. Pain thing. And when you're already a pretty rail thin quarterback, like there's not a ton of, he's not Cam Newton, right? Like he's not built like Cam Newton. He's wearing, I think, is he still wearing the flak jacket? Like he's wearing some extra protection there, which also like, even if that's designed for quarterback and like it's designed to make sure he can still play the position, it's still not the way that you're used to playing the quarterback. I think there's a lot going on there that's far beyond Jaden Daniels. So like if I could use this as a moment to buy Jaden Daniels, I'm doing it 100%.
And what's weird about this performance from Jaden Daniels, it was not good at all. But you look at the box score, Kate, he ended up with 275 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, 75 rushing yards, and a touchdown. So
most receiving game ever.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to point out. Like he ended up finishing as like a top 3 fantasy quarterback this week. But I believe going into the final 5 minutes of this game, he had under 100 passing yards. Like this was a complete no-show from Washington's offense. They got an 86-yard touchdown at the very end of the game. They put together another touchdown drive when they were down 10 points, very under 5 minutes, when Dallas was basically playing prevent. He was able to put up a lot of garbage time stats. And this is a Cowboys defense, by the way, 31st in the NFL in points allowed per game. That was coming off a short week. They played on Monday night. Washington coming off 10 days rest. And against a Cowboys defense that's just beat up with injuries. And they did nothing in the first 3.5 quarters of this game. So maybe you won't be able to get him cheap because the dynasty manager that has Daniels will see that he scored 30 points or whatever it was and not want to give up on him. But I came away from this game being a little bit discouraged about the direction of this offense.
I think you could be discouraged about the direction of the offense, but I think also like you look at the garbage time, at least when things are dysfunctional, ability to rise, and still put up some points, because you look at that performance on the football field and it was horrendous, right? So like you can finish as a top 5 fantasy quarterback, you can get 70 rushing yards, like all of that. despite this being a gnarly, terrible game. I love to see that. And then I look at like the future of this offense and I think, okay, they have to realize that like they need more. It can't just be Jaden Daniels and the rushing upside
No.
and Terry McLaurin. They need more in this offense. And I have to envision that like with the way that they have, taken steps so far and kind of been more aggressive on other fronts, I have to imagine that this is an organization that is going to follow through on that word and get Jaden Daniels a little bit of help that isn't a 48-year-old Zach Ertz.
Yeah, or Noah Brown, who drops 5 big passes every single game. Okay, let's talk about a couple players that have us concerned going into Week 13. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets in the NFL, all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That is FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the new Locked On NFL show. 2 shows every single day. 1 in the morning with Tyler Rowland, 1 in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk, available wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Kate, let's talk about some players that have us concerned. Let's go right to Christian McCaffrey, who going into this year was the consensus RB1 in Dynasty leagues. He looked awful on Sunday. 11 carries for 31 yards, 3 catches for 37 yards. I know the Achilles is bothering him, but he looked like he had no juice out there.
I mean, here's the thing. He looks like a guy who is hampered with an Achilles injury. And like, should we be surprised because this has already been an issue? No, but like, he doesn't look like Christian McCaffrey right now. Ranks dead last among qualifying quarterback or running backs in terms of missed forced tackle rate per rushing attempt. 59th out of 59 qualifying running backs, just 2 missed forced tackles all season long. 15th percentile, ranks 50th among those 59 qualifying running backs in terms of yards after contact per attempt. We're seeing the same thing in the receiving grade, 22nd percentile in missed forced tackle rate on receptions. Like, he's not the same elusive dude. Ranks 55th among 59 running backs in terms of breakaway run rate. You know why? He has 0. He has 0 breakaway runs. He doesn't look like Christian McCaffrey, and I don't know that they're doing him any favors, right? By like continuing to send him out there with, a decent workload. Like, he just doesn't look like himself. I feel like if your goal is to kind of maintain him and keep him available to you, like, wouldn't you be mixing in a little bit more of the Jordan Mason? Like,
you would think so, but that's really never been Kyle Shanahan. Like, once he finds a running back that he likes, and of course they're paying Christian McCaffrey, he's just going to ride him. And
I mean, to be fair, this is the fewest snaps he's played since his return. 56 plus snaps in his first.
Well, it's because they couldn't get first downs, right? They just couldn't sustain anything on offense. It's rough. Okay, there's another running back that I wanted to mention to you that I thought really struggled on Sunday, and that's James Conner. And this has been going on for a couple of weeks now. Against the Seahawks, 7 carries for 8 yards. In his last 2 games, 19 carries for 41 yards for the Cardinals. Trey Benson starting to become a bigger factor in this offense. Now, he's still getting the receiving work, and that's helping you if you're in a PPR league. But, man, Kate, he's been held under 3 yards an attempt 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times this year. I don't want to say it's over for James Conner because it's not, but I think we're getting near the end.
We're getting near the end, both metaphorically and like literally here, because let's not forget that this is an organization that has a looming free agent running back, and that running back is James Conner. Like,
Yeah.
they have a big decision to make, but back-to-back weeks or, back-to-back games with 33 or fewer rushing yards, like just isn't producing at that same rate. We're starting to see like kind of started the year hot, had some up and down weeks, definitely not as matchup proof as he used to be at one point. So I think that maybe that's the way that we like approach James Conner rest of season, as more of a matchup dependent option here. And then Trey Benson wheels up. Like, I
Yeah,
know we didn't
we're
like
in.
see a big day from him in week 12, but I still think like he has the draft capital. I think he has the physical profile of a potential RB1 in the league. He kind of got like a redshirt season almost to learn the playbook. I think there's a lot to like about Trey Benson. I've been very bullish on Benson, and what I've seen from James Conner only reinforces that tenfold.
Yeah. A couple other guys that were out there that just
What do
I
we
don't
do
know.
with CJ Stroud? What do we do?
That was the name I was going to mention. Nothing. You're just holding on to him, but this is why you and I were so not down on CJ Stroud, but we thought he was so overvalued this offseason, not only in dynasty leagues, but in redraft leagues. He doesn't give you anything as a runner most weeks. And now the efficiency is down. He's turning the ball over. We're not seeing the touchdowns like we saw last year.
I mean, I agree. And, even if the recent production wasn't factoring in, honestly, like we've been having this conversation dating back to last summer.
Mm-hmm.
How highly can we view a quarterback who, yes, like has the physical attributes to run when he needs to? We've seen him scramble for his life a couple of times this year, given the situation and ongoing pressure with the offensive line. Hard to evaluate like him purely as a quarterback, given just the number of mistakes in this offense and the penalties. Like, there's a lot going on, but I just think this comes down to the fact that CJ Stroud on his own, probably not a guy that you want to invest in anyways. Like, I don't even think this is a great quote unquote buy low opportunity, because I just don't believe in the ceiling. Like, if I'm going to,
he doesn't have the upside of a Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts or any of those type of quarterbacks. So now you're getting into the Jordan Love type of range, which is a very good fantasy quarterback, but not a difference maker. And the difference between QB8 and QB15 can be completely dependent whether your receiver's healthy, whether you have a couple of key offensive linemen healthy. That's just kind of the range where you're in with CJ Stroud. By the way, Kate, did you see him run out of the back of the end zone yesterday? Did the Dan Orlovsky?
That was an ugly, jaw-dropping play.
Yeah, just not great. Not great. I automatically move you down 2 spots in dynasty rankings if you run out of the back
for every safety you take in the course of a season.
You're just out. All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. Check us out wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Modjuk. I'm at Marcus_Mosier. Enjoy Monday Night Football. We'll be back on Tuesday to break it all down.